Okay, now we are on chapter 9 called Wipe Your Feet. Amazing, said the king. But still, she'd bring a lot of muck in on her feet, wouldn't she? Mud all over the carpets, I mean. I thought of that, sir, said Johnny, and he produced a large doormat that he laid down in front of the pig. Wipe your feet, he told her, and at these words Lollipop walked forward and scraped first her front trotters and then the back ones on the mat. Astonishing, said the king, but then how's she going to get out when she wants to? There may not always be someone to open the door for her like you just did. I'd thought of that too, said Johnny, and he unrolled a scroll of paper upon which he had drawn a diagram. It was a picture of a door, an ordinary door, except in the middle of the lower half of it there was a pig-sized section that had been cut out and hinged at its top to swing either way. It's a pig flap, do you see? Said Johnny. When Lollipop wants to go out, she'll push with her snout at the bottom of the flap, it'll swing open, and through she'll go, and she'll come back in the same way. She'll be independent. Astounding, said the king. You have a door leading to the royal garden, sir, I suppose? Asked Johnny. Oh, yes. The palace carpenters could soon put a pig flap in that, working from my design. Then you'd have nothing to worry about, sir. Lollipop goes into the garden when she needs and wipes her feet when she comes back in. Oh, but Johnny, said the king, the royal gardens are the queen's pride and joy. She doesn't much like digging, you know, too much like hard work, but she especially loves her rose garden. Roses are her favorite flowers, and she's never happier than when she's picking them or pruning them or deadheading them. Just think of the damage that the pig could do in the royal gardens. An ordinary pig, yes, sir, said Johnny. I quite agree. But just think of the good that a very intelligent, highly trained pig like Lollipop could do. At one end, she could turn over the soil in the flower borders and plow up the vegetable patch with her snout. And at the other end, well, a pig dung is very good for the roses, sir. It would be easy for me to teach Lollipop to be busy in the rose garden. You'll never know. She might become quite popular with the queen, and then, interrupted the king, she might be allowed into the palace. Johnny, you're a genius. He looked at Lollipop, who was still snuffling around her trough in case she'd missed anything. And then he said, Gosh, I'm hungry. Have you had your breakfast, Johnny? No, sir, replied Johnny. Well, come back with me and we'll have breakfast together. By now, it was broad daylight, of course, and there were plenty of people about to see the king in robe and nightshirt and slippers, on his head not a crown but a tasseled nightcap, walking back to the palace in earnest conversation with the boy who looked after the Princess Penelope's pig. I feel like having my favorite breakfast, said the king to Johnny. Scrambled eggs on fried bread. Does that sound all right to you? It certainly does, said Johnny. Back in the palace, they found the queen and the princess at the breakfast table. You remember Johnny Eath, said the king. I do, said the queen, though it is something of a surprise to see him here. You wait, thought the king. You might be getting a bigger surprise before long. And he gave orders for 2 breakfasts. As quick as you can. We're starving. Are you not going to dress Theo? Asked the queen. Or, let me say that again so it makes sense. Are you not going to dress Theo? Asked the queen. Later, my dear, later. Now then, Johnny, sit down. Sit down beside Penelope there. Johnny sat down opposite the queen, who he could see was looking very disapprovingly at him over a great bowl of roses that stood in the middle of the table. He leaned forward to sniff them. My favorite flowers, he said. The queen's expression softened a little bit. But, said Johnny, never in my life have I seen such beautiful ones. Please, ma'am, he said to the queen, what variety are they? The beginning of a smile appeared on the queen's face. They're a new hybrid, she said, grown especially for me. In fact, they're called Epwines. Beautiful. How true, ma'am, said Johnny, and the queen inclined her head, smiling broadly now. So you like roses, do you? She said. Oh, yes, ma'am, said Johnny. I would love to see your rose garden. Get this lot down you first, Johnny, said the king, as 2 huge platefuls appeared, and then I'm sure the queen will show you around, won't you, Eve? The queen, her own breakfast finished, stood up. Come and find me when you're ready, boy, she said, and she left the room. Just what's going on, Daddy? Asked the princess. What have you been up to wandering around in your night clothes? Have you and Johnny been hatching some plan? We have, they both replied, and they told her about the doormat and the pig flap and the scheme for making Lollipop useful for the royal gardens. so that hopefully the queen would come around to the idea of her becoming a palace pig. Things are looking good, Penelope, the king said. It looks as though Mommy has already taken quite a shine to Johnny. The next step is to make her like his pig. My pig, Daddy, said the princess sharply. Sorry, your pig, darling, said the king hastily. He, too, now got up from the table, rubbing his tummy appreciatively, and went out of the room. Johnny swallowed his last mouthful. That was lovely, miss, he said. Not miss, Johnny, remember? Perhaps he was so pleasantly full of scrambled eggs and fried bread, Johnny replied easily and naturally, Oh, sorry, Penelope. The princess smiled. Come on, I'll show you the way to Mommy's rose garden, she said. She's got a nice smile, Johnny Skinner thought as he followed.